Yeah. Yeah. I think like I don't like for me. I wouldn't say too recently or whatever, but a lot of times, at least my views right now have gotten kind of pretty partisan. I used to consider myself pretty centrist on things, but the more that I thought, I learned or whatever, and the perspective that I do see kind of reinforces the idea of me becoming more and more liberal when I see a lot of the injustices that they're talking about. You know, in my opinion, like preach more to power. You know what I mean? And I see that, and I'm like, okay, maybe these centrist stances that I used to have isn't really as viable anymore because
No, in my opinion, centrism is always the most viable. You have to be able to centrism, being towards the center, more towards the extreme.
Bro, you guys teach me so many big words. It's not even funny.
I consider you might, okay, Tornad. Now that you've debated me for like the last 3.5 hours, where would you say, just from your experience, like where do you think I sit politically? Like center right, far right, like right of center.
What is left and what is right?
For the sake of this argument, let's say Tornad is left and I'm right. Just like pretty typical American, like left and right wing principles.
Yeah. But to answer your question, you haven't said anything that I don't like. There's nothing that you said that I can blame you for thinking. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing that you said that like that makes me like think that you're like uninformed or whatever. So I really think you're center right based on like I feel like your personal responsibility memes are pretty high.
I certainly think that personal responsibility is just a really huge thing that a lot of people undervalue.
Yeah, and you haven't said any like crazy shit, so I would have to say center right. Like,
personally, I think I'm a little even more to the center than that. But of course, my opinion of myself is the most biased one.
Yeah.
I'd say you personally, Vern. I'd say you kind of like center right too, like because you and Tornad can like it seems like you guys can really agree on a lot. Like,
but there's something that we really need to talk. I am nowhere, not even close to the like any level of centrism. I'm a lefty motherfucker, dude. Yeah. I'm a fucking lefty, dude.
You lean pretty far over there.
Yeah,
that's why I would say that because like
you ever heard of
It's so much more extreme with the things he says than the things you say, Darren.
You ever heard of the horseshoe theory?
I think it's absolute trash.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I don't believe that there's much difference between the authoritarian left and the authoritarian right.
Okay, so this is now. I used to be pretty centrist, okay, and it took me a while to get to the point where I am right now.
Before you guys continue, let me get my learning cap on.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Well, Barricade. First, I have to describe the horseshoe theory to you, so that you have a basis for what we're talking about. The horseshoe theory is an idea that the political spectrum is not a straight line; it is shaped more like a horseshoe. People who are sort of. The idea is that people who are far right and far left are closer together than people who are center left and center right.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
A lot of people disagree with whether it's true or not. Tornad has just mentioned he disagrees with it being real. I personally see a lot of merit to the theory. My stance is it doesn't really... In my stance is, there are definitely different... They're not the same. It's not a circle. But the methods that authoritarians use to attain the power that they have in those far left and right-leaning ideas lead to the same result. the oppression and suffering of the people under an authoritarian government. It's just the methodology that's used to oppress the people is different.
Are the lefties like liberals and the righties?
Yeah, conservatives.
Essentially, yeah.
That's
thing
my.
Is, like, I'm so like ignorant when it comes to this stuff, you know. Like I don't even know where I would fall. You know?
Well, you seem like you would fall pretty center left, just based on what you said you agree with Tornad.
Okay.
That's that's fine. I disagree with it, but that's just of course my thought. Yeah, overall.
Yeah. It also depends. There's a lot of things that you could disagree with on the left as well. So.
Yeah, my thought with the horseshoe theory is, it's when the further right and left you go, just naturally the more authoritarian it becomes. It just trends toward that. On the far left you have authoritarian communism, and on the far right you have authoritarian fascism, which is they're very different in the sense that they do different things, but politically they're very, very similar. Yes, pretty much. That's how I would describe it.
Tornad, you're a fucking commie, dude.
No, I'm not a commie. I'm not a commie.
I would not say that Tornad is a communist.
I'm not a communist. You can at both understand the issues with capitalism and still support it.
Tornad's not a communist. Communism.
I thought you were like one of those socialism is like.
And even further beyond communism, even further beyond that, you have like Stalinism and Leninism, which is as far left as it goes, and it is as self-destructive as it can possibly be.
I disagree with so much. But granted, I don't think I can attack
my thought on the horseshoe theory is the methodology used by someone like Benito Mussolini, who was the progenitor of fascism in Italy, was it was different from the methodology used by Stalin, Mao Zedong, and Pol Pot in Cambodia, who were all communist dictators, but the result was the same: the deprivation and oppression of the people. Basically, the profit of the few at the expense of the many.
Okay, so all right, so let me talk directly to why I don't really buy in the horseshoe theory. And you've already avoided one of the traps that I don't like about horseshoe theory, or a lot of people.
I don't know what it is. I'd like you to tell me.
Yeah, one belief that I think a lot of people who do buy into horseshoe theory is the idea that both extremist sides are equally bad. You know what I mean? And you did say you don't think they're equally bad, but they can lead.
They're equally bad.
Okay,
no,
you do think they're equally bad? Okay,
yes,
so let me break that down. Okay, Stalinism, a lot of we're about to get real lefty in here. Communism, that is just I got to. Communism, used to create a power vacuum or authoritarianism, through the establishmentation of communism is fundamentally not socialist. You know what I mean?
Well, socialism is not as far left as communism.
It's not, but the goal, right, is equality among social groups, right? And even then, I don't necessarily agree that that's the most. Is workers owning the means of production for both communism and socialism. You know what I mean? Now, yes. People that use
Vladimir Lenin said that's the end goal of socialism is communism.
That's true, but Stalin is also an authoritarian.
That was Lenin, not Stalin.
You know what I mean? Oh, Lenin. Oh, sorry. They're also authoritarians. You know what I mean?
Lenin was an authoritarian too.
Yeah, they both were. That's why I got mixed up or whatever. But like the second you bridge that, you know what I mean? The second you exert that power, that's no longer what communism is supposed to be. You know what I mean? I think that's really important to understand. Now, I'm not offering that as an excuse.
I'm just saying that. I want to address that because that's very important.
Yeah.
Communism, as Karl Marx envisioned it being, was a perfect, I can't really describe it other than equitocracy,
Yeah.
where everyone is equal.
Yeah.
However, my personal belief, just based on my understanding of human nature, and also the many attempts by workers' revolutions or people's revolutions to establish communist systems,
Yeah.
have led me to the conclusion that it is not possible to attain what Karl Marx envisioned in the Communist Manifesto. I just don't think it is. Someone, somewhere, will see it as the prime opportunity to become the big dog on the playground.
Yeah.
And they will be able to do it because of how easy it is to exploit.
Yeah. And I can see that, you know what I mean? But we still have to operate in the realm of inherently it is not as bad as the far right. You know what I mean? Inherently, if now whether or not we believe it's possible,
completely. They're both completely undesirable equally. They're both entirely about the deprivation of the people. What I said before, the expense of the few at the profit of the many at the profit of the few at the expense of the many. It's just.
But what I'm trying to get you.
They both operate on collectivist principles. It's ironically even fascists work on the Marxist principle of identitarianism and being not an individual but a collective, a group. It's the same. It's why you had things like the Ku Klux Klan. We're white people, a collective, and the enemy is black people. They're not looking at the individual in any of that. They're looking at the collective. And when you can collectivize anything, what that naturally leads to is a dehumanization of the individual. And what ends up happening further along the line is because they're not human anymore, it doesn't really matter what happens to them in the minds of the collectivists.
I feel like in order for me to attack this, right? We have to talk about like the principles involving themselves. You know what I mean? For one, what Karl Marx did and how he looked at different groups is really important, right? Karl Marx isn't the first person to identify people with different groups. So I don't really think that should be lambasted onto his ideology specifically. Karl Marx focused on the division between...
I say it just because it's the springboard for that ideology. He was kind of the first one to make it known in the public consciousness.
But what I'm saying is all Karl Marx did was highlight the differences between the poor and the rich, right? Those differences, right? People putting people into groups have existed in different forms throughout history. I don't feel comfortable with putting like Karl Marx being the bedrock of collectivist mindset. You know what I mean? Because that's not necessarily what it's about.
Karl Marx was the guy who created communism.
Okay. I just think that's an important distinction to make. Also, the possibility that someone can abuse a system does not make it inherently worse than a system that is perpetrated and designed to specifically target and hurt specific types of people. You know what I mean?
I would argue that authoritarian communism, which is as far left as it gets, libertarian communism is, in my opinion, the ideal communism that we can't get. That's impossible to achieve because.
But we don't necessarily.
That is the communism. That is the communism that Marx himself envisioned us having, but that I believe is impossible to actually attain.
I hate to say it like this, but like. I hate to say it. I think this is really important to get, right? Is that it's okay to have a system that you think is bad and practically unachievable, okay? But to look at a system that is both philosophically, You know what I mean? In practice, in every single metric that you can, account for is bad, and say that this theory, right, is as bad as this other theory and practice, you know what I mean? That's down to its core terrible. I think that's not right. You know what I mean? Like, just because you
I
believe that
understand
it
your
might not
point.
work doesn't
Well, no,
mean
I
that
don't
it
believe
is.
that it might not work. I don't believe that it might not work. There are dozens of examples of it not working.
But at the same time, there's dozens of examples of capitalism not working,
And
democracy not
even
working.
libertarian communism functions on the same collectivist dehumanizing principle. Is even as something as simple as the proletariat versus the bourgeoisie. The bourgeoisie are people too. Some of them are
Yeah.
just as big of assholes as we are, and some of them are perfectly nice, understandable, reasonable people. That can't be attributed to a term like bourgeoisie versus proletariat. That's like a very solid word. It has a set meaning, and it stands in for the people's identities.
You're
Collectivism
correct.
collectivism on the left is what made in the minds of Stalin's subjects what made it okay that the Stasi were killing off, or whatever the name of Stalin's secret police was. That was what in their minds made it okay that he was killing off political dissidents, because they're not part of our collective. They're not part of the real communists. They're
But
not the part of the real believers of the system.
I still have issues with what you're saying, because you're trying to portray this like it's the ultimate stand-in for collective mindset, when this collective thing exists everywhere in your life.
No, I'm saying
advertising
that it does
companies,
exist, but
you know
I'm
what I mean?
saying that the further right and left you go, the more prevalent it becomes. To an individual who's more towards the center, the individual themselves becomes more paramount.
In order for me to come at this correctly, we have to talk about like what exactly you mean by the individual, right? Because in the
Well, the
greater
individual is exactly what it sounds like. It's the person. You see a person for who they are, what they think, what their traits are, what they want, what they have, what their goals are, like what makes them human, basically, what sets them apart from everyone else. Because you can have someone who is white but be a liberal, but a collectivist would assign them either just the term white or liberal.
that's not necessarily true. Basically, all right. So what the only reason
This is also the reason why people like Hitler. Hitler doesn't really apply to the right or the left. He doesn't really fit into any of those categories, but he had the exact same. He had nice, good job. But Hitler was an authoritarian, regardless of whether he was on the right or on the left, and he was a full-on collectivist. That's why whenever you read his book, Mein Kampf, he focuses on one aspect of a group of people, in this case, Jews, and singles them out as the problem. And because when he took power, the rest of... Well, alright, I don't care about what his motivations are, but regardless, when he began to influence people, the people that he was in charge of, they joined his collectivist mindset and saw Jews as a collective term and not individuals. Jews are the problem. We should exterminate the Jews. Suddenly that becomes... It's subtle, but when you use these dehumanizing terms in collectivist thought, suddenly it becomes much easier for you to do things that with an individualist mindset would be unthinkable.
Well, okay. So what I'm trying to, okay, what I'm trying to unpack here is the fact that you're, it's like you've created this like self, like propelling boogeyman of collectivist thought, where everything that we function, from every aspect that we can measure, okay, people do break down in certain groups. People have spending habits, and every single aspect of your life. You know what I mean? So when you're making policy on something, right, you're not going to consider, what Johnny and Taylor, down the streets personal stories are. You know what I mean? But when you're looking at the data and looking at how these groups are affected by certain things, you know what I mean, and diving into why, you know what I mean, looking at the individual in these circumstances aren't necessarily viable. And this is in any circumstance. You know what I mean? The entire field of sociology, you know what I mean, depends on things like this, There's no scientific field that doesn't. So I just think it's, the inherent idea of, more collective mindset equal bad, I have to reject. You know what I mean? Only because of the fact that it just doesn't really play out like that. You know what I mean? Hitler was also extremely nationalistic. You know what I mean?
Yes, he was, but that's also a form of collectivist thought. Sort of. Nationalism is kind of separate because it prioritizes the nation. The nation isn't people. It's the nation itself. It's separate from actual people. And that's a totally different topic. But the thing about collectivist thought is that in almost every single time it's been applied to policy and sociology or society, it has produced a kind of negative effect. We talked before about how the Irish and the Italians hated each other. That is because to the Irish and the Italians who had a blood feud with each other, the Italians couldn't be good people because they were Italian. The Irish couldn't be good people because they were Irish.
But here's something. Here's something that I
mentioned before. The Ku Klux Klan saw that whole collectivist ideal of us and them.
Okay, and this is something that I feel like we need to establish here. I don't disagree with you. I don't like looking at people. You know what I mean? I don't like when people assign themselves to certain groups. You know what I mean? I think it's dumb. You know what I mean? I don't like how people, care so much about this nebulous thing called culture instead of picking out what they value in the world. You know what I mean? I don't like these things. You know what I mean? But when you're looking at data and you're trying to affect things, right, there is what's effective and what isn't. You know what I mean? Using data is effective. Using an individual person's decisions is not effective. Also, when you look at people's individual decisions, you can look and totally accept that there are outliers. You know what I mean? But it's how you use the data, not necessarily that you're using it at all. Is what I'm trying to get across here.
No, I'm not disagreeing with using collectivist things outside of society and policy. That's like in terms of business and things of that nature. And that's okay to an extent, and I will say collectivism is okay up to a certain point. I personally believe that individualism will always be superior to collectivism because of how dangerous history has proven widespread collectivist thought to be.
But
and
what I'm saying is, these things that you're talking about as collective mindset are just like, they're not even more so. They're just picking a different thing that people have always picked. You know what I mean? This isn't different. This isn't new. This isn't more. This isn't even really less.
That's not what I'm arguing. Arguing. Collectivism has always existed. But what I'm saying is, but if anything, that furthers my point more, that in almost all of those cases, collectivism has been detrimental.
I disagree. Like, how can we... I disagree. Like, collectivism, what about democracy? Like, that's a collectivist, like, mindset, right? Like, these things, like... You're taking the power completely out of people who are 9 times out of 10 way more knowledgeable, you know what I mean? Way more, let me think. Way more knowledgeable, have way more like experience dealing with these political issues, and you're putting this power in equal proportion. You know what I mean? To people who and to people who don't know shit. You know what I mean? For the sake of the power of the people. You know what I mean? Disadvantaging people who do their research, people who have this power, to the people who don't do shit. For the sake of the people. And when they talk about
with collectivism, though.
Maybe that was a bad example. I'm trying to think. I lost my train of thought because I'm playing Spider-Man right now, and they got my fucking.
That game seems really good.
Yeah, bro.
I've been watching streamers play that game. It looks really fun.
Yeah, dude, it looks so good, doesn't it? The web swinging is what has me the most enticed.
Oh yeah, the fighting also looks really novel.
Yeah, but I guess
know how annoying it was to have my cousin fucking telling me every 5 fucking seconds, yo, can they unmute me?
Yeah, King's kind of.
It's kind of weird, bro. Like, I don't talk so much. Like, what kind of motherfucker openly talks about hentai that he watches? Like, what the fuck?
But I guess like how like more so how democracy got founded. You know what I mean? It was founded off of this inherent us versus them. You know what I mean? The people in power versus the people who aren't, and how they should have a say too. You know what I'm saying?
That's why we don't have a democracy.
We do have a democracy. This
We
is not
don't. We're not a
this is
direct-
not a constitutional republic. This is a representative democracy.
No, this is a constitutional representative republic.
It is a that's not true.
Yes,
I know the people who say that. That's not true.
Every time I see someone talk about technicalities, the U.S. is technically a republic.
That is not true. Andrew, you're the same person who thought like fucking the same. Never mind. Hold up. We're gonna have to look this up because from what I understand, that is completely untrue. To say, oh shit.
I mean, you're kind of right. It could be
representative democracy.
Representative, but it's at the same time a constitutional republic.
Andrew, I cannot hear a single fucking thing you're saying.
I was trying to figure out what Chance was trying to throw shade at me for, but so
I'm saying when I say that is like you. I don't really think that's true. I don't think that's true, and you've heard a lot of people say a lot of dumb shit.
Okay.
Oh fuck! God damn it! Let me look it up because I'm fairly certain.
I'm about to look it up too.
I'm looking up right now. A constitutional republic. This is according to Conservapedia, so there's an obvious bias here.
And it's only conservatives.
Yeah, I know. According to Conservapedia, so of course, note the bias. A constitutional republic is a state where the officials are elected as representatives of the people and must govern according to existing constitutional law that limits the government's power over citizens.
We have to really look into the difference between a republic and a democracy. That seems to be like what our like big contention is here.
Well, I'll actually look it up. Republic versus democracy.
We're both. So, okay, a republic is a political order in which supreme power lies in a body of citizens who are entitled to vote for officers and representatives responsible to them. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A democracy is government by the people exercised either directly or through elected representatives. We're basically
so we're both. All right.
We're a democratic republic.
But we are definitely not a direct democracy.
No.
I never said we were. I was just saying we're a democratic republic. Well, I used representative democracy or whatever, but
so
democratic republic.
I guess it's a democratic republic.
But like those same principles, like still like the point that I was making in terms of that still apply though. You know what I mean? That whole funding, and people didn't think democracy could ever work, ever. You know what I mean? And in a lot of cases, it doesn't. But it changed over time.
The problem
you know what I
is,
mean?
of course, the tyranny of the majority.
Which is the idea behind the
the Electoral College, yeah.
What, you think the popular vote should win?
Yeah.
I thought that for a while, up until like a year ago. I did a number of papers in school and outside of school about how the popular vote was better, we should go with the popular vote. But after having looked into the reason for the Electoral College existing, I realized why it exists.
It's to balance the power between states, but I think the individual power between states is not as big as a deal as it was before.
It's more so to balance the power between 3 major cities and everything else.
Well, hold up. Is this the idea that people can win a presidency just by like focusing on 3 major cities? Because that's not true.
No, that's not what it is.
Okay.
If you have a block of major cities, it's extremely easy to just completely ignore flyover states.
This is the idea then, and that's not. Yeah, I think I could be wrong, but this is the idea, and that's not true.
Sort of.
I feel like I represented that very poorly.
If you have like a popular vote, you can just go to all the big city
and what I'm saying is that's not true. You won't be able to do that. The numbers don't play out like that. Like if you
kind of do.
If you look into the
I'm curious. Hillary Clinton won the presidential popular vote by I think it was like 2 million last count. But have you looked at a presidential map?
Yeah, I've looked into the map.
Because by county? Because I can point out every single city on the map because they're all blue.
Check this out.
And like nothing else is blue. It's just those cities.
I don't know how deep. I don't know exactly. The second you said counties, right? I remember there was a big conservative meme that I saw on Facebook about that, and found out
it's not even a meme. Look up the official.
Why is everything
map
that's like
by county
not agrees with you is a meme? Like I've noticed that. Like you call everything that's
it's not a meme.
It's just like what I like to say.
A meme.
Tornad, I would highly recommend right now, if you have the ability, to look up the official by county map, because almost the whole thing is red, except for the major cities that I can point out and name to you. I'll do it right now. U.S. presidential.
Okay, so
map,
there's
county.
First of all, before I look this up, and I'm gonna look this up, right? There's a few things that I have to talk about here. All right, county size should not play directly into like votes.
It doesn't.
For one.
It's all about
that's kind of a dumb way to look at it. You know what I mean? There's a bunch of counties, especially in the Midwest, that have a shit ton of land, but not a lot of people that live there. You know what I mean? So, like that, even having the argument that like that should, be a case for the Electoral College, is kind of lame to me, right? But I will look into the
I have it open right now. There are a number of randomly spaced blue counties in there that have very little to do with geographical anything. But just looking at the blue, I can see Seattle. Almost the entire rest of Washington is red. Portland and Salem, the rest of Oregon is red. The entire coast of California, so San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, San Jose.
Either way, if the idea is like if you're trying to get the majority of the state, like by the electoral vote, if the majority of the people live in the city, they should still dictate the outcome of that state's vote.
But that's the point. They're not supposed to.
Why?
Obviously, because the concerns of people who live in the city are not always shared by the people who don't. And on the off chance that they conflict, the people who live in the city, which will naturally outweigh those who don't, will not be able to correctly represent the people who cannot, just by virtue of their population statistics, make their concerns known in the government.
You know, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little confused.
Phoenix, Santa Fe, Austin, Dallas, Houston, Jackson, New Orleans, Detroit, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, New York City, all of Massachusetts, and all of Vermont, Washington, D.C., and Miami. Those were the easy ones. Oh, and Chicago.
Did that just happen?
But the point that I was trying to make is the people in the cities, because obviously there's more people in cities than there are living in the rural areas in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
The issue with that is if the people in the cities are left to control the entire outcome of the vote, their interests, which may directly conflict with those of people outside of the cities who don't have nearly as much weight, despite having different problems that need to be solved, will lose every time and never have their interests represented properly.
But at the same time, the people in the city have their votes count way less just based off of where they live. You know what I mean? Like, for one, there are a ton of economic positions that people do agree with on both the city and rural life. Especially, sometimes it differs when it comes to taxes and things like that or whatever. But like, shouldn't that be how it works, to represent the people, not the small few that may live in the rural cities, that a vote may count 2 to 3 times more than somebody in the city? You know what I mean? Like, I don't really think that's right.
I have more to this, and I feel like I've been phrasing it poorly.
And a lot of this stuff.
I'm a little lost with this conversation right now. So, are you guys basically saying that in like a county area, their votes matter more than the people who live out of the county?
Technically, yes.
No.
No, right now, technically, a vote. If you're a voter in Montana, your vote is heavier than a voter in New York City.
Yes, due to the Electoral College.
Because of the Electoral College.
The Electoral College.
Okay. And
So, like,
are there other cities that have their votes weighted more than others?
It's not cities right now, it's states.
It's states,
Yeah.
okay.
Right now, it's like, Montana has 3 electoral votes, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the college, spread out by 500,000 people, right?
Okay.
New York has like 20 electoral votes, but it's spread out by like 18 million people. So if you divide those,
Okay.
yeah, you get what I'm saying? If you divide those 2 numbers, the Montana people will have a bigger percentage for each person's vote.
For each vote. Okay, that makes sense.
Like,
I mean,
yeah, there we go.
like, now that I understand the Electoral College more, like, I've always known what it is, but never really, like, understood what it is. Like, I don't know, I feel like it makes sense.
It made sense 100% when it was created, and it still kind of serves its purpose, but I could see it being in need of a little bit of reform. I don't know how that works.
I'm in favor for a popular, and I don't think it should be straight up popular. You know what I mean? But I'm definitely against the Electoral College.
Here's the thing,
right?
It seems nowadays that if you're for the popular vote, you generally lean more Democrat, and if you're for the Electoral College, you generally lean more Republican, because there's been 2 elections in the past 2 decades where the Democrat won the popular vote but lost the general election because of the electoral. That happened with Al Gore in 2000, and that happened with Hillary Clinton recently in 2016. So the Electoral College seems to favor Republicans.
Yeah. The main thing with what I'm saying is, it is if it were like a direct democracy, it would be extremely easy to just skip over the flyover shit and just focus everything on the major cities.
And I think that is true. If you had a popular vote, you could just go to cities.
No, you can literally just ignore everyone except
But
the cities.
what I'm trying to tell you guys is that this criticism is not true.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so when you look at the population of like the top 3 cities in America,
A third of the U.S. lives between Washington, D.C. and Boston, Massachusetts. A third of the U.S. because of how metropolitan that area is. It's not a city, it's a mega city, basically.
but that won't play out in the popular vote. Okay.
It's a third of the country.
That doesn't mean anything, Andrew, is what I'm trying to tell you. And I don't even know if that's necessarily true.
That is true. It is.
It's statistically accurate, yeah.
We're talking Washington, D.C., Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh,
Jersey
all of
City,
those.
Newark, Atlantic City.
But, okay, the problem with what you guys are doing is that 3 cities in America have over 2 million people, okay? After that, it drops off so hard.
No.
It drops off. It does, guys. That's what I'm trying to tell y'all.
Do you know,
this
Tornad,
concept that you guys are
in New
talking
York
about
City?
are wrong, huh?
Tornad, how many people live in New York
All
City?
right, let's look it up. Hold on one second.
Do you know
No,
how many
tell me
people
off the
live
top of your head. Tell me off the top of your
I
head.
can't
Don't
tell
look
you
it
off
up.
the top of my head.
It's
can't tell
12
Make an
million.
estimate.
It's a shit
I thought it
ton.
was 14.
12 million.
It's more than most states combined.
Yeah.
In the Midwest.
You can campaign in New York, Los Angeles, which is I believe about 8 million, San Francisco, San Diego, San Jose, Miami, Detroit, Chicago, and Seattle, and you'll basically have those are 8 cities, and Boston, let's say, that's 9 cities, and you will have more than enough votes to win the entire election.
Okay, let me, one second, because I can't do this without looking it up, because I remember coming across this point before, and I need to explain to you guys why you're wrong. Hold on.
I'm gonna have to go to sleep soon because I have class at like 3:35, but I have to be awake at like 1.
My classes got canceled because of the hurricane.
One second.
Oh shit,
let me
are you in the
just
Carolinas?
Yeah, I'm in South Carolina.
Oh shit. Good luck.
let me
I know, right?
let me explain this thing, because it's really important. One second. Let me look it up. I'm bringing together the numbers now.
I'd love to pull an all-nighter if I didn't have classes tomorrow. A class, sorry. Well, all this talk about politics has gotten me energized.
Okay, for one, the population of New York City is 8 million. 8.5 million, not 12.
Whoa.
Okay.
That might be the
No.
resident.
The population of New York City is 8.5 million. And I went to
According to
Google,
Okay.
and this is typed it in. It was the first thing that came up. Okay? Let me see. The population of New York City is 8.5 million. The population of LA is 3.8 million. The population of Chicago is 2.7. Houston, 2.7. Philadelphia, 1.5. Phoenix, 1.4. And I'm just going down the list of like most popular populated cities or whatever. But it drops off so fucking heavy. You know what I mean?
What I'm saying
and
is
all of that together only
Boston.
takes up the top 10%. The top 10 cities only take up 8% of the nation. Only 8%.
Dude, look up the Boston, Washington corridor. All right, it's this.
Boston, Washington corridor. But
Yes.
is that a city, Andrew?
Yeah, basically.
No.
That's
five
right.
cities
It's
that are-
exactly what he said. It's exactly what he said. It's that whole couple state area between
it's
Boston
cities
But
and
that
are so
whole
close together,
place-
they
that
basically
whole
play
place-
Well,
Yeah, it is. It's like, yeah, it's basically one. I live here. I know what it is. I can
lived there,
drive.
yeah.
I
But
can
even-
literally drive from here in an hour, get to Philadelphia, I can drive another hour and get to Washington, D.C., come back to where I started, drive an hour up, hit Newark, drive another hour, hit New York City,
Now,
drive another hour.
See,
The
imagine you're a politician. You just hit 50 million people in that trip. You just hit 1/7 or 1/6 of the U.S. population in that one drive.
Yeah.
Between Washington and Boston.
And if you can win that whole area, suddenly you control. Suddenly you control .33
You guys act like
repeating.
You guys act
the
like
entire
1/6% is like the mere determining of an election. That's just not true.
No, we're saying that whole area is .33 in the end. So it's 33%.
So would you
US.
prefer that, where campaigns mainly happen in Ohio and Virginia and all swing states? Really? Like, what do you mean?
Swing states matter.
I know they matter, but what I'm saying is like,
that.
what I'm saying is that's not all that it takes to dictate, with only being 1/6. There's way more nation out there.
Well, let's be honest.
It could be a completely. It could. Yes. Okay. No. We're gonna have to talk about
if those
stone
states
later.
were subject to change, then people would go and campaign there. But as long as California is completely overrun by Democrats, why would a Republican campaign as hard there as they would in Ohio?
And I feel like, in that belt right there, they will focus their effort on the other parts of the nation.
That's not a.
You know what I mean?
In my opinion, that's not a problem so much with the with the candidates themselves as with the people who are completely unwilling to think about switching their vote. If you want people to campaign with you, be open to the people who would campaign for you.
My issue with the popular vote is you would, if you were running for president, you would focus on 4 big metropolitan areas in the U.S. Everything else is irrelevant.
That's not true.
Yes.
Why do you keep saying? Why would you ever
go to the entirety of Nevada? Why would you go to the entirety of Nebraska when you could focus on the Washington-Boston corridor, which is smaller than both of them?
It's only 1 out of 6.
It's 33%.
It's only 1/6.
It's 1/6. It's not 1/3.
It's not that big. Like, it's big, but it's not like the end of the universe.
Okay, listen, the Boston-Washington corridor, right? The Great Lakes area, Chicago, Indianapolis, those areas. What's it called? Southern California area, so LA, San Diego, and then the Northwest, so Seattle, that area.
Portland. Yeah.
Other than those 4 areas, and maybe let's say Florida as a 5th.
Yeah.
Other than those 5 areas, why would you spend your time anywhere else?
Because
I want to say
all the top
70 to 80% of the U.S.
Stop. Are we talking about big swaths of the country, or are we talking about cities?
No, those are pretty small.
No. Answer the question. Are we talking about big swaths of the country, or are we talking about cities? Because the entire northeast part of the country, which is basically the corridor that you're talking about or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, we're talking about big sections of the country.
No, we're not. If you can drive from somewhere within 4 or 5 hours,
I can drive from Boston. I can drive from Boston to Washington, D.C. in a little under 8 hours.
It's still 1/6, dude. You have all of these cities, huh?
Why would you spend your time campaigning for a day in Montana to 100,000 people if in that same time you can campaign in the Boston corridor and reach 40 million people?
Yeah, by the same token, the drive from Seattle to Portland, which is another area that he mentioned, is another 8 hours.
But you pretend.
The drive from Los Angeles to San Francisco is probably about 10 hours. And what was the last one you mentioned, Andrew?
The Great Lakes, Chicago, Indianapolis, that area.
Yeah, the Great Lakes. That whole round trip would probably take you less than a day.
You guys pretend. You guys no. Stop. It's no exactly. You guys pretend.
If you're a popular voter.
Oh my God! Can you please let me respond to what you're saying?
Go ahead. I'll be quiet.
Okay.
But like I was saying, no, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I was about to laugh my ass off, bro. I'm not even gonna fucking lie. Like, I'm not even gonna fucking lie. That's just about to make me laugh my ass off.
I'm kidding. Go ahead, Chad. Go ahead.
The area that you're talking about also has pretty divergent political views. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
This entire area still only takes up 1/6 of the nation. You know what I mean? You would actually be a fool to neglect those other places, and let's say people do vote against you in those other places. You're still going to lose. Someone that focuses their entire campaign... No. You guys' point, because you guys like to sit here and pretend like appearing in the city is the only place to advertise. We're talking about advertising dollars here, right? You can put that stuff... So distance doesn't really matter here, is what I'm talking about. Not exactly,
why would you ever go and campaign in a state like Nebraska, which has like 3 Electoral College votes, when
we're not talking about the Electoral College?
You could
Well, we're talking about popular voting, but the
well,
same
okay,
place.
well,
We are.
I know, but the Electoral College
context.
is made. But the Electoral College is made up of like your population. 3 Electoral College votes is the bare minimum you can have, regardless of your population.
Yeah.
So why would you go to a state like that, where there's hardly anyone relative to those corridors that we mentioned, when you could focus almost your entire campaign on those 4 and be in control of a major, if not majority portion of the U.S.?
Because these lines that you're drawing right now, right, on paper, that's not how they play out in reality, okay? For one, even if you do, let's say a person who does campaign primarily on that list, that does not necessarily mean that they're going to win that list. You know what I mean? Those areas vote dramatically differently. You know what I mean? The Northeast does, but you know they still pull in votes there. That's what I'm saying. But you're gonna go to places like Austin. You're gonna go to places and try to get that well-rounded voter base. You know what I mean? In that kind of system. Because even if you do focus on, and even if you do focus on the main cities, all of the main cities, the top 10 cities combined, cities combined is still only 8%.
Austin is one of the 3 biggest. It's Dallas, Houston, and Austin.
I live here. Listen, it goes Houston,
yeah, I'm
Dallas,
pretty
Austin.
Sure it's Houston.
It's Houston, Dallas.
Let me find out 1 sec.
But yeah, even if you restricted the city, I thought the issue that we had here is the fact that it's focused.
Houston is the biggest one.
I thought the issue that we had here was the fact that it could focus on cities. But if you do just focus on cities, that's only 8% of the population. That's only 8%. If you just focus on the top 10 cities.
But here's the thing that I feel like we're being left out. We're also forgetting about people who actually vote and don't vote. So I feel like maybe what Baron and Andrew are saying probably has a little bit more like sway, just for the fact that the cities that they're hitting sounds like old cities, you know, like where older people are, where people vote more, you know what I'm saying? Like
no, that's incorrect. The people who vote more are older people in rural areas. Older people exist more in rural areas.
I'm about to go to sleep, but I would highly recommend, like right now, looking up a county election map for the 2016 election.
I saw it. But here's what I'm saying. But the problem with what you're saying is that in rural areas, and if you look at this map, you know what I mean? You see the Midwest, right? All completely red. You know what I mean? For the most part. But these counties have vast land with a small amount of people. Do you really think that those people's votes should count more than everyone else's just because they have more land in their county? You know what I mean? Like that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Like even when I look at this map, you know what I mean? A lot of these places are centered around the center of the nation.
It is based on population again. So California,
the counties aren't based on population. You keep switching between states and counties.
States are.
The states are. Yeah.
The states I just told you to look at a county map to see like the stark difference between red and blue, despite the blue being the popular vote winner. With states, the population is the most important thing. Like, of course, states that have more weight, like, yeah, it seems unfair on paper, but Montana has 3 votes. California has 55 votes. That is a difference of almost 20. Like, it's almost 20 times the amount of Montana.
But even in a state where it benefits me, like Rhode Island, right?
Well,
I
yeah,
still want that shit gone.
3
You know what I
times
mean?
20 is 60,
3 times.
and California is 55 votes. 3 times 20 is 60. California has 55, so it's almost.
But even in states where that benefits me, I still want it gone. Like, for example, like Rhode Island. You know what I mean? Rhode Island shouldn't have as much power in the electoral process as it does. You know what I mean? But it gets that simply because the state boundaries and shit like that. You know what I mean? Now, you know, when I look at this map, what I'm trying to argue is that judging this by counties is irrelevant. It is irrelevant. You know what I mean? I just want to get that point out. You know what I mean? The proportion between people and land mass is not something that I see as being valid. You know what I mean? As having more sway than anybody in the city, just because you live in a county that has more land in relation to less people. You know what I mean? I don't think that's right. Okay, I fundamentally don't think that's right. And the idea that you can focus your campaign on cities only, you know what I mean, to get this the result that you want is not true. It's just not. It's not how it works. You know, that's the main thing that I kind of want us to get through here. Like, I get that it is a lot of people, and that area that you mentioned is also a lot of people. You know what I mean? But right now, campaigns are mainly held around 3 or 4 states. You know, maybe 5. You know what I'm saying? So I can't sit here and be like, yo, that's so much better than the popular vote.
What I'm saying is, if you turned it into the popular vote, it'd be the same thing as campaigning in 4 or 5 states. But, you know, it's not drawn by state lines. It's just drawn by city lines.
All I can say is I disagree. I feel like if you focus your campaign only on cities, you're going to fail your election. You're going to fail your election. If you expand your campaign dollars to reach, you know, those more rural areas, that they're going to add up, because those cities are a small portion of the population.
I'm not saying you can just ignore. I'm saying, like, go ahead and, like, throw your campaign around the U.S., but you as a, like...
You're saying the focus cities, I think.
Yeah, the ones you're actually, like, doing speeches at and, like, going around and meeting people. You're going to stick to the cities, because that's where you can maximize presence.
But that's what they already do. They don't go to, like, bumfuck nowhere. They only go to bumfuck nowhere when the state has so much sway in being a swing state. You know what I mean? Yeah, but right even then, they already go to. But like do you really think that having a lower popular vote is acceptable to win a presidency? Do you think that's right? As opposed to, like, vice versa? Do you think that's okay? Do you think that should be a system that we uphold? Relying to having a president that has lost the popular vote. You know what I mean? Do you think that's how it should be? Do you think that the fate of the nation should be held onto a few rural states? Do you think that like, it should be the case? Or do you think the more people who, you know, pick a side, you know what I mean, in this political game should get their dividends? You know what I mean? What do you think? Because we're not in the same nation that was first created. You know what I mean? This whole, like, divided by states lines thing, it doesn't really play as much as a force as it did before. You know? So do you think that's an okay, you know, marker to have?
Oh my God, man.
Before I go, all I can
the way
say
I see
is
it,
I'll be
the
very
Electoral
interested.
College, the Electoral College is pretty balanced in the way it operates. You know what I mean?
I
Each state has 2 senators, no matter what size. Rhode Island and California have 2. All right, and then that's the
we're not
Senate.
talking about the Senate when we're talking about the Electoral College right now. We're just specifically talking about presidential elections. I'm okay with what he does with the Senate.
All I can say
not-
is that I'll be very interested
I'm
to
not
see
saying I
what
care about the
the
Senate. I'm saying that's
2020
the
electoral
number of
map
votes
looks
they
like.
get is based on their representatives. And each state has 2 senators. That's why they get 2. And each state has at least 1 representative, which is why the bare minimum is 3 electoral votes.
Yeah.
California has like 35 representatives in the House, which is why they have so many electoral votes. So the Senate, everyone has 2, balances the size of the state. Each state has its own representation, and then the House of Representatives is what balances the population. You get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying, Andrew, but I'm
the
trying to focus in on the
Electoral
presidential
College.
election and
Okay,
whether or
and
not
the
the
Electoral
philosophy
College-
of that is correct.
The Electoral College mirrors that for presidential elections.
And I'm going to repeat myself again.
All right, go ahead.
Do you think that is justified? In the current system where we focus the majority of our campaign dollars primarily on a few swing states that in terms of population don't really mean that much in terms of population, but does in terms of the ability to pull. You know what I mean? Something like Rhode Island, I don't think should have that much of a bigger, avenue for power when it comes to presidential nominations as other states or other population groups. You know what I mean? I don't think that that's right. The philosophy, I get that from a representative standpoint, and I could see that from a representative standpoint. But when it comes to the presidency, I don't necessarily agree with that. And what I'm trying to get you to say, is whether or not you do stand by that or not, and to defend why you do.
Alright, so I'm about to go to sleep.
All right, man.
All
It's fun
I
talking.
can say is I will be fascinated to see what the electoral map looks like in 2020. That will be interesting.
Basically, every outlet I've seen talk about 2020, the outcome 100% depends on who the Democrats run.
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like Trump definitely has a strong contention. He's done
Assuming
a lot
he's not
of.
impeached by then.
He won't be.
Trump's not going to get impeached, but I don't think he's getting
If
He's not going to get impeached.
We don't know what's in the indictment, so let's not even say
trust
that.
Trust me, Democrats and Republicans have been trying to impeach each other for the last 25 years, and none of the papers have been submitted properly.
This isn't stupid jokes or whatever. This Mueller shit, right? This is real shit.
Mueller,
right? We don't Mueller. Sorry.
No, Mueller was paid off. Is it
Come
Mueller?
on,
Mueller?
dude.
Okay,
no, it's true.
The indictment,
right.
really? Really?
No, do you know what this
paid off?
You know that the indictment was based on the Steele dossier, who was hired and paid for by the Clinton Foundation through Uranium One.
Dude, you're literally spitting deep state like conspiracy
It's not even
theories
deep state.
right now.
It's there. You can if they ever fucking release the FISA memo or whatever the hell
what you're
that
saying
is.
It's there if they show us.
You can say the same about literally everything in the government. I don't even know if they will.
Are you a Trump supporter?
I like him. I wasn't originally. I hated him and Hillary, but I like him now. I like him now because of what he's done overall, especially for the economy.
What has Trump done for the economy?
The second he took office, this is not usually good indicators of economic health, but I guess it's worth pointing out the stock market began rising exponentially. The Dow is currently up 20,000 points from where it was when he took office.
Dow, isn't Dow
Yeah,
at
the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Yeah, it's at oh fuck yeah, it is. I'm really tired. I believe it's up about 10,000, 5 to 10,000 from where it was when he was just beginning.
That's because they know he's going to decrease taxes.
He's cut taxes, which incentivizes growth. He's created about 2.4 million jobs, and that's personally why I think he's going to hang on to the swing states he gained during the election. Ohio.
What about the shitty tariffs that hurt the people that he campaigned on helping?
Yeah, the steel workers are kind of getting shit on right
now.
Which ones?
Also,
steel
writing
workers?
the economic progress of Obama.
His tariffs have brought steel jobs back into the U.S.
No, they haven't. Are you insane? All tariffs do is fuck people over.
Wait.
Well, he put tariffs on. Correct me if I'm wrong. He put tariffs on Canadian steelmakers. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Canadian steelmakers have had tariffs on our products for the last 50 years.
Is, right?
I do.
Huh?
It means when their product comes here, we have to pay more for it.
You know what the purpose of a tariff is, right?
Enlighten me.
It is in order
economic
to
protectionism.
It's for economic protectionism,
which is horrible, which no economist agrees with.
The idea is instead of buying from Canada, make it in the U.S.
Yeah,
yes, that's exactly what it is. And the purpose is to create jobs in the U.S.
But it also hurts the companies that buy the steel, that craft the steel into other things.
Here's the thing.
What prevents the companies from outsourcing?
Nothing. That's why
tariffs.
Harley Davidson moved its main headquarters and factories to Germany after the tariffs hit.
You're losing shit, and what? You're helping out a few of the steel mills in Middle America. You know what I mean?
Steel and aluminum tariffs, they help the mills, and that's it. Everything below that requires those resources, like steel or aluminum, all of them get shit on. Car manufacturers, nail plants, anything that needs steel or aluminum as their main product. Everything gets more expensive.
Wait, okay, so that explains why certain cars got a little bit more expensive.
I guess it should also be mentioned as well that GDP growth is currently at 4.2%.
That's true, but it's been on an upward trend ever since Obama.
It's been on an upward,
yes, it has. Yes, it has. Completely.
It's been stagnant.
No, dude. You can't
Are
just
you fucking kidding me?
facts.
Obama literally called it the new normal to not have GDP growth numbers that were over 2%.
It has not been stagnant. That's not true. It hasn't been going up as far, but it's been steady.
And GDP growth over 2% for any modern first world country is very rare.
It is very rare.
China, I think, is the only exception, and even then, they've recently been going down because they can't support that much of a growth.
It is pretty rare. But this upward trend isn't because of any policies created by Trump. These policies have been in place for a while now. This isn't because Trump
between 2015 and 2016, the United States went from 2.4% to 1.6% GDP growth.
All right, the last time we had over a 5% GDP growth was in 1984.
What is GDP?
Gross domestic product.
Okay.
Does that mean anything to you?
It's basically how much a country
it's basically an indicator of wealth.
Yeah.
No, I understood what you guys said. Once
So
you guys
in
said
2016, the GDP was 1.6 annual change. It was 1.6 positive. All right, that's not bad for a first world country. Now, India had a 7% GDP increase because they're a fucking third world country and they can industrialize. The U.S. is already industrialized. You can't build on top of the mountain, basically. You know what I mean?
Well, then how come we're at 4.2% right now?
Where are you
These
getting that
involve a
number?
lot of things. We are at 4.2%.
Actual labor statistics.
We are at 4.2%, but that we've been having this upward mobility
The last
for
time
a
we
while
were
now.
at anywhere near 4.2% was 1999.
But what I'm trying to inform you of is that these trends have already been set in place. Is what I'm trying to like. There's no economic policy that Trump has been able to do.
But there is no upward trend here. All I'm
There-
seeing is stagnation.
That's not true.
In the years of Obama.
That's not true. Obama, like, whether or not you want to like dispute the stimulus package and whatnot, you know what I mean. There's a lot of grounds for that.
I'm
you know
looking
what I mean?
at
But
it
when
right now.
Oh god.
0.3% GDP growth. And then 2008
What year?
or
That's because
2010.
he, well, that's because
well,
he
no,
can't- you have to
obviously
remember-
because of the crash. It's because of the it's because of the
You have to
recession.
remember, Obama
That's
didn't
no
inherit a
question.
recession.
Yes, he did. But going on with that, 2010 3%, 2011's 1.7%, 2012 2.2%, 2013 1.7%, 2014 2.4%, 2015 2.6%. 2016 1.6%. It seems pretty stagnant to me.
Okay, so I'm looking at a chart right now that has it more up to date, up to 2018, right? And basically, up until a few months ago, it was around the 2 to 3% as well. I mean, just in the past 6 months or so, it jumped up to 4%.
Okay.
And that's the thing about the GDP. It can go up and down based on a whole bunch of international factors.
Okay. What international factors would you say kept it really like low during the Obama presidency?
Stagnant?
Yeah.
I don't know because I wasn't paying attention to politics when I was in middle school during the Obama presidency. But I will have to look into that.
Well, I'm actually going to go to sleep now because I'm probably going to be dead tired.
That's fine.
All right, good night.
Good night, man.
Good night, buddy.
Good talks. Fucking degenerate Trump.
Oh my god.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Oh my god.
I'm kidding. But he's very biased, and he seems like he's on the edge of conspiracy.
Yeah.
So
Like, the second he started talking about like the Mueller shit, it's like, come on, man, come on.
you had so much credibility.
It's like, come on, man. Like, how can we even like we're not necessarily saying that Trump was definitely colluding or whatever, but like these indictments have gotten so many people like on the hot seat already, including Trump's like lawyer. Now his lawyer did not get like indicted for collusion. I think it was like taxes or some shit like that.
Yeah, it was campaign finance.
You know what I mean? And we don't know, you know, what goes all the way up. We don't know if, you know, the meeting at Trump Tower with his son, you know what I mean, could lead into anything like that. What evidence, if they have any for that, we don't know. You know what I mean? And even if we do know, if Republicans keep the House, they're probably not going to move to impeach Trump. And I'm not sure if I even want them to with Pence. Like, fuck, man. Fuck. But, like, it might be because it's late, but it's like, bro, how you let your credibility go down that hard, that fast? Like,
That's what happens when 5 hours of talking. That's what 5 hours of talking will get you, bro.
Do what?
And that's what 5 hours of talking will get you.
Get you what? I didn't hear the last thing Chance said.
He said, how did he lose his credibility so fast? And I said, that's what 5 hours of talking will get you.
The worst case scenario for Trump right now with the Mueller investigation is that he indicts and they arrest and basically sentence Donald Trump Jr.
Yeah,
I think Trump
Donald
Jr.
Trump
do.
Jr. is probably on the hot seat.
He is like the next person to go to jail right now
What'd he do?
because he coordinated the meeting with the Russian officials.
And we don't know if it's
Hillary.
necessarily on
Oh,
legal
that thing?
grounds yet. We're still,
Yeah, okay, I know what you're talking
we're
about. I
still,
heard about that.
yeah, we're still waiting to see about a lot of this stuff. But yeah, like, I don't know, man.
My dislike for Trump isn't anything political. It's more like moral based, like just the way he talks about things. That's my disgust for Trump. The way he talks about people and disrespects women. That's the only reason I don't like him.
Yeah, I agree with you. For me, that's enough basis.
Yeah,
man.
recently he's just become like, and the way people describe him, like he's just amoral.
Yeah, he doesn't have any morals. Like, what are morals to him? He doesn't
Those
even know
things
the
that are
meaning
getting
of
in
the
the
word
way.
morals.
He seems to idolize dictators and dictatorships around the world.
Yeah, I hear about that.
He be making a lot of
seen
jokes,
that.
bro. He be making a lot. He be
Yeah.
like, "Yo, it's a joke."
I've
Huh?
seen
He
that.
making a lot of jokes, man. I remember when he first got in the presidency, regularly asking if he could pardon himself.
If he can pardon himself?
Yeah,
Well, that's the thing though. Legally, by the Constitution, he can.
I didn't know that.
Yes, the Constitution gives him the right to to pardon anybody for anything, except in the case of impeachment or there's like one other thing. But so there's nothing that says there
Damn,
he can't.
so he could
therefore
pardon
he
his
can.
son, and he's probably gonna pardon his lawyer too.
But I think the specific
You
is that
think
it's
if he does that, it would fuck him over?
He's
Yes.
probably gonna wait for a little
If-
bit. It depends on what
it-
what
it's
this
literally one of
turns
those.
into.
If he thinks he's gonna lose the election, he'll pardon right before he leaves office. And if he wins the election, he's just gonna wait till the end of his second term,
Yeah.
which is when
And I
most
don't think
presidents
they're gonna
pardon.
even be able to do impeachment unless the Democrats win the House.
The
Do you need both the House and the Senate, or I don't know?
for impeachment, you need a 2/3 majority in the Senate. I think it's both, I believe. But
Okay. I don't think Dems are gonna get it in the Senate.
Was the court, the big court,
Supreme Court?
to get impeached? Yeah.
No, they don't do anything like that. The Supreme Court does nothing but basically decide or interpret the law. That's all the Supreme Court does. They interpret laws and for regular people, I guess. But I think that the pardon specifically says for federal offenses. So if they get anyone on like state like crimes, not federal, he can't pardon them.
Oh,
It's some it's some
So you
Didn't-
can only get pardoned for, repeat that again?
wait,
for federal
didn't
crimes.
the state what state was it? Wasn't it a state that prosecuted the lawyer dude?
You can use that stuff I found at the recycling center.
That's what I'm saying. That if Mueller's smart, everyone he prosecutes he's gonna do it through the state.
That way they can't be indicted.
That way Trump can't pardon
I
them.
mean, pardoned. So indicted. I'm stupid. So if a state deems you a criminal, you can't be pardoned. But if the
Yeah, because
government
that goes
deems
into
you a criminal, then you can be pardoned.
and that goes into the whole state's rights. Like, why should the government say you're innocent when the state says you aren't?
Okay, that makes sense. Bro, have you guys seen all these leak skins that have been dropping like fucking bodies, bro?
For what?
For everyone, bro. They just dropped like this really cool Jinx, Malphite, Kane, and who's the other character? It's Jinx, Malphite, Kane, and I think Sona? Oh, Jinx, Malphite, Kane, Sona, Ziggs, and Yasuo. They all got a skin for what's this called? They got an Odyssey skin where Yasuo, Ziggs, Sona, Jinx, and Malphite are like some kind of bounty hunters, and King is one of them. And they all
No, I
got like,
haven't.
skins
I
for
don't
that
follow
like kind
League
of
too
thing.
much now.
I
got to
still
gold.
have
I
them
got to
on
gold and I
Instagram,
quit.
so okay. I still follow them on Instagram, so I see all the skins and whenever they release.
My goal was to get a gold,
anime things.
and I did it.
Bro, why gold?
I-
Have more
Well,
aspirations
you play
for
League,
yourself,
right?
man. Yeah, I play a lot of League. Well, used to.
Gold is like top 10%.
Is it really?
Yeah, like 80% of people are in silver and below.
I didn't know it was top 10%.
And I think I ended either gold 2 or gold 3, so I'm up there. And at that point, I was like,
I made it.
okay. I made it basically. Yeah. It got to the point where I couldn't play with some of my friends in rank, so I was like, nah, I'm good.
Yo, so on this long conversation we just had, I am confused and not confused at the same time. And I feel like it's just me understanding what you
Real
guys
quick.
are talking about because I don't talk about politics.
Real quick though, the pardon power of the president applies only to convictions under federal law. So yeah, if they're convicted
If the
under
government-
federal. Now, yeah. So he can't pardon anything state level.
So was his son a federal offense or state offense? Well, obviously federal.
They can
Some question.
they can pin it as either. You can basically Mueller can prosecute him federally, or he can have the state of New York prosecute him since that's where the crime was committed.
Better check inside.
So if he's smart, he'll have the state of New York prosecute.
Right. Or he's gonna do it federally so that Trump
Trump can't
pardons
get back
him.
in power.
And no, so that Trump pardons him and commits political suicide with that. Basically.
Voice from an auto
I don't know. Some people saying like he might do it federally so that he baits Trump into pardoning his son.
What else can I find around?
Hold on, before you finish, I just found this meme, right? And it's like meta meme, and it has like the first picture is when Double D kind of has a book and it says facts, and the next picture he opens it and it's